I owe you all is what I do. Yeah, getting that. I appreciate that. So, like I said, I hope you all had a good holiday if it was for you. And if you worked, I hope it was a quiet day at work because the rest of the country was working. Now it's hit and miss in Utah. There's departments of streets and sanitation were working. Not sure exactly how long it took them to pull that thing out. They were worried about EPA stuff. They were worried about sparks because that means there was a gas line broken in there too, or they suspected there was. That's on 100 South by the Dixie or Utah Tech, and I guess it's closed now. So if you want to go down that way, get a good running start, you're going to need it to clear that. But it happens everywhere, and part of our class today is about problem solving. I want to talk about problem solving from a point of view of talent development. Most of the companies that I have consulted with over time have not had a program teaching people how to solve problems. You know, they've maybe said, watch me, I'm the old guy, I've been here forever, and I'll show you how to do it. Well, showing you how to do it isn't teaching problem solving. It's showing somebody how to do something. And there's value in that. I got no issue with training. I believe in that. But to actually teach somebody how to solve a problem or how to solve problems, plural, that's something that a lot of companies don't do. The first one that I ran into that did was Toyota. And Toyota had a program, and you had to have a badge. They call them badges. You had to have a badge in problem solving as an employee to get promoted. They didn't want to move you up in the organization if you hadn't proven to them that you had some methodologies in your mind. They didn't have to be the right methodology, and you didn't have to have the right answer every time. Because most problems, what is the right answer? You know, Northern Ireland, what's the right answer there? I don't know. Ukraine, what's the right answer there? Abortion, what's the right answer there? There's a lot of things that we deal with in life that we don't know right answers for. We have our opinion, and you're entitled to your opinion, but in the workplace, unless your workplace is related to that, you can't take it there. I mean, if you work for an abortion clinic, then you're required to take a stand one way or the other. And that's part of the criteria for employment. And so on occasion, we're allowed to, I suppose, be unfair to human beings because of the nature of the business that's there. If you go to work for Catholic Social Services, at one point in time you had to be Catholic. And that was understood because that was part of what the services that they were providing the public worldwide that they were intervening with and helping was a bit of the why they do what they do. And so they wanted you to have an understanding of that if you worked for that organization. Okay, that's okay. That's not discriminating against somebody because they're not Catholic. That's a requirement of the organization. And we have some requirements like that in jobs, but otherwise we don't bring those in, right? So problem solving, teaching methodologies, teaching ways to solve problems is something that's of value. The answer, however, is something that we need to be easy on because we need to understand how they got to what they got to. When Toyota taught me, and I earned my badge in problem solving, I realized that I hadn't learned anything about problem solving yet. I had just learned enough to open the door to really start to take it on. And when I was trying to do it on my own and everybody's watching, all of a sudden you go, I don't really know that I was paying attention like I needed to. And this is not something you learn from a class. How many things do we teach you don't learn from a class? You know, it takes a lot of years to learn some things. Simple things like running CNC. I say simple. It's not simple at all, but comparison to some of the things we have to do in problem solving, it is simple. So it takes a long time. So Toyota's required that. I later then did some things for Autoliv in Ogden, and Autoliv has a problem solving course that eventually I taught for them. And I taught one at Boeing. Boeing requires one as well. And on how to solve problems. So three companies with three slightly different approaches to how they solve problems. We're going to look at a little bit of how Toyota does it. This is not specifically a problem-solving class. It's more of a question of exposing us to a little bit, but if you own a business, don't you want to teach the people in your business how to solve problems? Otherwise, they're all yours. All the problems come right up to you and you've got to solve them. They land on your desk and Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. And he put that plaque on his desk because he had to solve everything, including, are we going to drop an atomic bomb on Hiroshima? Think about that decision. He couldn't put that off on somebody else and say, well, they touched the button. They told him not to. He couldn't. It was his call. We're going to bomb a city and kill it. And then we're going to do it again. Some decisions, as they weave into problem solving, you looked at a bigger picture there. He said, I think this will stop the war. It did. They said, hold on. We don't want any more of that. Don't do that again. We'll talk. And they talked within hours of the second bomb. And that was a call on a problem-solving mindset. He didn't do it alone. Of course, the whole, all of the best that we had were involved in that discussion about whether we ought to do it or not. I am awfully glad that I wasn't one that had to have a part of that decision. I mean, think about that. If you were one of the decision makers and you said, I don't know if God likes this or not, but I think it's the right thing for America. I mean, I don't know what you would say. I don't know what your belief set is, and I don't know what your patriotism is, and I don't know all of the things in making a decision like that. All I know is that's a tough one. And solving problems, often we wind up with ones that seem like they're like that, that we have to face sometimes. So we're going to talk about problem solving in the second half of the class. We're going to talk more about some workforce labor, strategic labor or workforce staffing. We want to, how do you know how many people you need? Because every time there's a problem, Larry just says we need more people. I heard him say it a couple times. Right? He's defending it. And sometimes that is the right answer. Yeah, I wasn't bagging on you. I was just teasing you a little bit because that's our first thing a lot of times is we need more people, and sometimes we really do. But how do you plan? I remember back in the day, this was pre-Winter Olympics in Salt Lake. Salt Lake was all excited about hosting the Olympics, right? This was a big, big deal. And so the UDOT said, all right, for us to do this, we have to do a couple things transportation-wise. One, we've got to widen I-15 from I don't know where to where, but all of it.
They're still working on it.
And they're not done yet. they're not done. But the Wasatch Constructors Company won the bid during the Olympic era to widen I-15 through 45th South and Provo, and we've all fought with the traffic in that area because you're right, it's still being something that's going on. But on that bid, I looked at the bid as an outsider, as a consultant, and I looked at the bid and I had a conversation with the guys that did the bid because I was fresh off of a meeting with a guy whose name I won't say because he lost his shirt, and I don't think he should have, but he got the contract to build another runway at Salt Lake Airport. And he bid it wrong. They changed the specs a little bit. He bid it wrong a little bit. And the result of the whole thing was a train wreck, and he lost his business. So think about that business. That wasn't his first job. He was an established concrete company and contractor in Salt Lake. And, sometimes when we don't problem solve correctly, we wind up with grave consequences. In that case, that was that. So I was looking at the Wasatch Constructors bid, and they had in the bid, they had, as I recall, 63 Ford pickup trucks that they were going to all buy from Butterfield Ford. So my first thing was, how come Butterfield Ford's getting the business on? Well, they got a state contract. I asked the other Ford dealers I knew, and they're going, no, that's just a bunch of hosiery. It's not right. But it was legal. It was what stood. But 64 pickup trucks for the job. What were those pickup trucks going to be used for? Do you want to take a guess? You'd hope they were going to haul some materials, but they weren't. These were the supervisor's trucks. All they were going to do was put 100,000 miles on each of them, driving up and down I-15, further clogging up my traffic. 64 of them. So how do you cost something like that? How do you project? How many supervisors are you going to need for that job? I dare say they got 63 too many. Maybe. I don't know that for sure. But did they need? It was a big job. It was the largest construction job bid that year in the United States. It was $1.2 billion. I think it was a big job. Yeah, you needed supervisors for And it was over a lot of territory, so you need scattered supervisors that have the ability to drive around and see who's smoking weed under the bridge, right? Which, that is what happened. They had a little problem with that. That made the newspaper. Of course, Salt Lake Tribune's always interested in that kind of stuff. And my question is, how do you project your labor requirements? How do you project your supervisory requirements? And I want to start that conversation today. Because if you're looking at starting a business, let's ask a question. How many employees do you think a bed and breakfast would require if they served breakfast and if they offered an evening meal? How many employees do you, let's say it's a 10 bed room, bed and breakfast, pretty good size one. What do you think? How many employees would they need? Some of you have been down that path already and have thought about that and kind of have an idea that you learned it was a lot more than you thought it was going to be. A restaurant. How many employees do you suppose Cliff Rose had when you worked there?
Like in total?
Uh-huh. Suppose 200?
Like Cliff Rose, like the entire thing?
Yeah.
More like 400.
Like 400. Okay, we're talking about a motel, not a big one, in Springdale. Now, how many people live in Springdale? All 400? No. Probably 3 of them, Not very many live in Springdale. And you can't live past it, right? I mean, if you do, you're in Canaan, right? And that's a long drive, $30 toll if you're going to drive it on the highway. So how do you get a 400 count labor force at a motel? It's got stuff. It's a nice motel. It's got nice food. A private restaurant you were telling me about. I want to find out about that. That sounds cool. And resort kind of stuff. I'm sure you can get all the resort amenities there because it's an expensive place to go visit. I've never put that on my list of things to afford yet, but it sounds interesting. It sounds like maybe it'd be a nice treat someday to go check it out. But who would think you need 400 people to run a joint like that? I wouldn't. We're going to ask the question, how many people do you think it takes to run a food truck? Somewhere along the line, you might need to answer that, right? Because a food truck sounds real appealing, doesn't it? It sounds like just you, and it can be just you for a minute. But as you succeed, what happens?
You need more.
You want to grow. You need a truck at the fairgrounds, and you need a truck at special events, and on what was Pioneer Day, we had 4 food trucks lined up at Sand Hollow for the fireworks that they didn't have. So that meant they sold more food, I think, right? They had a concert and some bands and stuff, but they had food trucks lined up there. But what about your regular route? If you've got a food truck, do you have that covered? Do you want to lose the customers that are looking at you in the regular route? There was a food truck in this town called Chicago Dog. I don't know the guy that owned that personally, but he made stuff like it was from Chicago, and I lived in Chicago 10 years. You can't buy Chicago food here. Italian beef sandwiches and Chicago Vienna hot dogs at the relish that's like fluorescent green. It's like this stuff, you can't even buy that here. But that's what Chicago hot dogs are like. And his hot dogs tasted like Chicago hot dogs. I could never find him. I wanted to buy his stuff. I loved it. Couldn't find him. Well, he'd say, yeah, I was on Facebook. Yeah, that was yesterday. I want to know, where are you right now? I don't know where you were. That's not going to help the customer base, right? So how do you, he lost his business, by the way. Still got the food truck, I think. I saw it parked in the driveway in Bloomington, South Bloomington one time when I was driving around there, and I think it's his. I think, wow, what a shame. It costs a lot of money to make a food truck, right? You got to gear it up. You got to get it licensed. And by licensed, I mean food handling licensed. Of course, you have to have plates on it too. But all that stuff, it costs money, and so you don't want it to fail because you can't be in enough places at once. And you want to think about how you do that growth. Because right off the bat, you don't necessarily want to buy 2 food trucks. We had a coffee truck in this town called Affogato. Anybody remember that truck? Coffee truck, non-coffee drinkers. It parked at the bicycle shop a lot of times on Bluff Street, and Annalise West was the lady that owned it, and then she started a permanent place in where the old movie theater was, on 10th East, that old movie theater that was on 10th East there, and it's a bad location. And it was high rent, and it was way more space than she needed for a coffee shop. So all of those things add up to failure of a really nice coffee shop. Because the personnel required to cover the hours and cover the marketing, cover the prep work that's required, is a lot more than you'd expect. So we don't want to make those mistakes if you're starting out a business sometime. We want to have the conversation. What do we need to do? And then if you're in a company, let's suppose Wilding Wallbed says, guess what, guys? We don't sell anything east of the Mississippi River. And maybe there's a lot of people out there that don't have enough space. You ever been to New York? There's a lot of people who don't have enough space. And what if you had a boutique Manhattan shop that was, just to convince people to buy this walnut wall bed that's high end and put it in their $5 million penthouse and get a little extra space in it? Maybe? Don't do that, by the way. I'm not saying that's a good idea. It might not be. Research stuff like that, though, and say, what if you did, though? What if you did? How many people would it take? Could you just kick Steve out and tell him go do that? Maybe get rid of somebody that's in the way. No, Steve's not in the way. I didn't mean that. This is recorded. Don't ever play that. I don't want that to go there, because I don't mean that. But the fact is, how are we going to staff it? How are we going to grow? What is the labor requirement if we want to do something? And how do we get them trained? And how do we get them supervised? And how do we ramp that up? What choices do we have? Do we have to go out and hire a bunch of people? Do we have choices when we need to add staff? Nod your head this way. What are some of those choices? What are some of the things we can do when we need to add some people, but we're not quite ready to pull the trigger to hire them full time yet? What can you do?
Temp services.
I heard temps in stereo. We can hire temp service, which all they do is check out that you pay your bill. Tell them what you need, what skill sets, and they see if they can find anybody. And in our bad labor market here in St. George, the temp services survived. You might wonder how they did that. It was not the same as it was in a robust market. They squeaked a little bit and had to work at surviving. But the way they survived is they catered to people that didn't want a full-time job. There's these people that I don't want your incentive plan because I really want one day off a week.
Right.
And if you don't want to accommodate me in that, that's just too bad for you because I got some talents, but I don't want to be there 40 hours a week. And I want to play, or I've got kids, or I got a family, or I've got school. We have lots of reasons why people don't necessarily want to commit to a full-time job, and the temp services have really targeted those people. Some people like the variety. I don't want a mundane job where I'm going to do the same thing all day, every day, all day, every day, all day, every day. I want some variety. So I love maybe stocking shelves at Walmart for a little while until I realize that it's more than just shelf stocking. All the people aren't cooperative, are they, Brennan? All the people don't do what they ought to do. And so there may get a point where I say, I don't want to do that anymore. If you're on a temp service, that's a phone call. Say, send me somewhere tomorrow. Say, S&S Steel needs people. And, it might not be the executive job. It won't be the executive job. But that's an option we have. What other options do we have besides temp?
Training base.
Say that again?
Training base.
And what does that look like?
My wife's company does it, where they bring in somebody that they want to hire on, and then let them work a whole day, and then almost like a temporary day, and then decide if they fit with the crew, that they can say, okay, we'll come back and we'll do another training day and see how it works out.
That's a great idea if you do it legally.
Ask it.
There's a couple ways to do that illegally. Yes.
Interns, we have some from here coming over to our place.
You say that again?
Interns, like.
Oh, okay, yeah. So if there's students that or people that are training, intern doesn't have to be a student. Intern can be somebody that wants to go into that skill set. Pharmacies hire interns sometimes if they've got a little bit of schooling behind them and they're not in school right now. So interns is a way. What else?
We hire part-timers.
You can hire a lot of part-timers. You know, you can go that some job descriptions work well for part-timers. I remember when the ice cream factory out there was Blue Bunny, and Blue Bunny recruited completely at Sun River Retirement Community, and to run their guard check, security and the guard check. All they had to do is write down license number of the trucks coming and going, weigh the truck when it went in, and lock the gate if it looked like there was trouble. And that's pretty much what they had to do, and that was well within what a lot of retired guys in Sun River wanted to do. They worked 2 days a week, and the rule there was, this is an interesting rule, the rule there was that if you can't make a day you're on the schedule, you gotta get a replacement cleared for you. And so it's your problem if you're on the schedule and you can't make it. You're welcome to have the day off, but somebody else has to clear it for you. Now that's where we run into problems with training and legalities. The training day, we have to pay people for that day. And some companies don't want to because they go, well, we're just test driving. You know, they're checking us out. They're not productive. They're just, you know, it's just a little game. We're going to work for a few hours. No, that's not legal to do it that way. You have to pay them. And you want to, because that's the right way to do it. I had a client in Ogden that had a beautiful system. I didn't understand it for a while, but as I got to understand it, I found out it was incredibly illegal what they were doing, but it worked beautifully. It was an injection molding house. The largest recycler of plastics in the United States. They ground up junk plastic and they squirted out sewer lines that have holes in them on purpose, so that the leach fields kind of thing. And Infiltrator Systems was the name of the company. To go on record, they're still in business. They are not in Utah, however. They had injection molding machines, large injection molding machines that stuck out, that spit out these big things. And the guy that was running the molding machine pushed the button, waited for it to spit it out, took a pocket knife and trimmed the flash off of the molded part, stuck it on a pallet, and then waited for another one to come. When I was looking at the employee list, 100% of the employees lived at the same address and had the same social security number. That is not legal anymore. You can't do that. But they did, and most all of them were from Mexico, and they were incredibly good workers. And the deal was, you can go back to Mexico anytime you want to go, but bring somebody to take your place before you go. And so they dragged somebody in that hadn't had safety training on the injection molder, and they'd have them shadow them for a day or two to learn how to do it, but they didn't get paid for that. It's just your buddy. Buddy was coming to work and shadowing you so that you could leave. 3-4 weeks, you might leave for a couple months, depending on what family things happened. And it was beautiful for the people. It was the right way to solve that problem for that workforce, for those people. It gave them an option to do things. It just wasn't 100% legal. If there were some things to have made it legal, right? You could do the same idea with legal I-9s, right? And with pay them for the training, which is what your wife's company is doing. It's a brilliant idea. You bring somebody along, you pay them to get up to speed, and now you've got, over time, you've got a Rolodex. You've got more people that are familiar with your company, and you'll see them working for somebody else at Home Depot or Lowe's, and they'll go, "You got work yet?" They want to come back to your place because they liked what you were doing, and they're waiting for you to need more help. And when you hear that, you're doing it right. There's a couple things you can do. You can hire consultants. Now, consultants on the higher technical thing are sometimes too expensive. You work for a living and then you retire, and then you go back and do the same job you were doing for twice or 3 times as much money. And that's great for the consultant, it's not good for the company. But if you've got a specialty area that you're good at, or you've got a specialty need that you need some short-term help on, consultants are great solutions. Let's suppose a code's getting wrong on your CNC code for your routers. You can wrestle with that yourself to try to figure it out and see what's going wrong, or you can call somebody from the outside in and pay them consulting rates and let them help you fix it and teach you how they fixed it. So we have a lot of choices when it comes to labor planning. How many people should report to somebody? How many people is too many? Let me ask it that way. If I've got an org chart, and here's me, and I've got 12 people reporting to me. What do you think about that?
You don't have any time to do the work that you need to do. You just have people reporting to you all day long.
That's a genius and 1,000 helpers, and that Jim Collins wrote about that. Some of you read that in Jim Collins' book that we studied in another class, and that's not a good model. And there is no right answer for how many, but in some places 3 or 4 is the max that one person can successfully manage and help grow. And if you're teaching problem solving, you need to spend a little time teaching, or have somebody teach. If you're in the HR department, that's a service that the HR department needs to offer, is grooming and teaching people. Problem solving is one of them, and we'll talk about that today a little bit more. Before I go further, I want to give you a homework assignment. It's going to be on problem solving, it's going to be on culture and culture shift, and it's going to be on communication. And it's due in 3 weeks, and if you need a day or two on that, let me know, and we'll move it around. By due, I need you to have something written up, and it can be a PowerPoint type thing that you can turn in, or it can be a words type of thing, or it can be pictures type of thing, or it can simply be an answer. The question is this: why did the Titanic sink? I'm interested in a map of the communications. I'm interested in an assessment of the culture on board the ship and with the company that manufactured the ship and with the agency that sold the tickets to the passengers. So I'm interested in some culture questions, I'm interested in some communications, but at root, what is the root cause? Why did the Titanic sink? And don't just go because it had a hole in it, because that really is the answer, but I need a little more than that. Why it had the hole and how it got the hole and what was on, because I'm looking for root cause, not superficial. I'm looking for root cause. And I'll help you with that a little bit as we talk about problem solving in the next couple of classes. But I'd like you to take a shot at it. And this is one of those things that whatever you say, I can't prove you wrong. So, you could say they had too much wine on board, and I can't really prove you wrong. I could say, well, how many tons did they have? And why do you think that tipped it over? I might ask you to support your thought, but I can't probably say you're wrong. This is one of those things that I want you to do some thinking about. It's the purpose of the assignment. And it's a pass-fail. If you do it, you'll pass. Right? So if you don't do it, then you'll have a goose egg for the assignment. But it's worth it to put some thought into why did it sink? Because there was a lot written about it, and there was a lot of study done about it, and there was a lot of information about the construction and the architectural design, if you call it, for a boat. I don't know if it's architectural design, but anyway, the boat design. There was discussions about that. There was a problem with the iceberg thing and the radio communication that was going on. You'll learn quite a few things as you study. Those of you that don't like to read as well as you like to watch a movie, there are a variety of documentaries on this topic that you can pull up on YouTube or somewhere online and learn one person's opinion. Don't parrot one person's opinion unless you completely buy it and say, okay, I think that they got to it. I think they found the root cause. So any questions about that? Somebody's going to say, this class is nuts. Why did the Titanic sink? There's stuff to be learned there. I'll leave it at that, and for right now, that's what we'll do. All right, I want us to talk about the handouts that you have, and if you didn't get them, I kind of got them. I didn't get them, so I'm going to kind of take. We're not going to read every one of these, but we're going to talk a little bit about them. And these are about workforce planning. And there's a guide to strategic workforce planning, and I'm going to start our conversations about that. Got a PowerPoint here or a PDF file that I would take. your seats. The data says that 92% of companies have some level of workforce planning, meaning they may know about how much labor force they're gonna need next week or next month, but only 21% of companies take a strategic long-term approach going, what's gonna happen to us next year or the year after that? The strategic workforce planning is a way that we can get the right people in the right jobs at the right time, and that's what we really want to do. We need to understand the reality of our current state. We need to forecast what talent gaps we're having. If you watch Jay Leno, he says all the welders in the United States have gray hair or are bald, and they're too old to weld. And he doesn't mean that detrimentally. He just means that we're not grooming a young workforce of welders in the United States. And those of you that have welding in your process, you see that trend. It's not a true statement. All the welders aren't old, but it's a talent gap that has been identified that's very, very hard to argue with. That we've got more old people trained to do quite a few things. Master electricians is another example. We have a lot more older master electricians than we have young ones. Now, we offer a journeyman program in that here at the college, but it's hard to recruit. The reason it's hard to recruit is we pay a lot right here compared to other jobs for electricians, and we need electricians helpers, and they get jobs and they lose money if they go to school. And it takes 4 years to get your master electrician's journeyman, and that's a lot of school. That's like a doctor, right? And so we have people that just say, it's not worth it to me to get that certification or to get that skill set. I'm gonna continue on with what I have, and in time, I'll just start my own company, and I won't be a master electrician. I'll just call myself an electrician, and somebody will hire me. And that's somewhat true, but it's a problem in terms of managing the talent development that needs to happen in an organization. So if you're going to start a discussion with the ownership team, or if you're one of the owners, the first step really to look at in workforce planning is to think about, where is your business going? Do you know what your business is going to be doing in the next short period of time? Are you going to be expanding? Are you going to be contracting? Are you going to be shifting a specialty area? Are you going to react to competitive pressures in some way that you haven't so far? So the strategy of your business is an important thing to understand before you decide workforce planning issues. But what area of the business do you want to grow? You know, if you were Star Nursery, for example, you can think about their business. They got flowers, they got retail shops, they got pots, they've got landscape design services, they sell gravel and block, right? They've got all kinds of facets to their business. Where's the future of Star Nursery? You know, which one of those is the one that's going to grow, or which one of those is the one that should grow? And you know, if you look at Star Nursery in another market, you will see that wood chips are a big part of their business. The McDonald's playgrounds and the Park District, they put wood chips down at, you know, home plate just about. You know, they put it all over the town. What happens to wood chips in St. George?
We fly away.
They fly away, they dissolve, the sun melts them or does something, turns them to dust, and wood chips don't survive here. We had a golf course on I-15 just under the underpass there from St. George into Middleton. That golf course that was there, they put wood chips down on all the rough on that golf course, and they had two problems. One problem was sulfur in the water, so they killed the grass, and then the wood chips just all went away. And so two bad ideas in this market that cost a golf course. So we would not want that to be our money. So we need to establish where the business is going and determine whether we think it can sustain that. We want to look at the business based on profitability. I don't want to grow the segment of my business that stinks, that's not profitable. I want to pick the stuff that is the most profitable and say, how do I do more of that? And you know, that might not be an easy answer, but that's the answer that we want to look for. How do I do more of that? Because that's the most profitable. If there are areas of my business that I could sell, I mean, when you look at Star Nursery, I'm not speaking for Star Nursery. I don't know those people in the corporate office in Vegas. I don't know those people at all. But I'm saying that there may be segments of their business that they would like to sell. And that they could sell and make some money by selling. Let's suppose if you sold off the segment of your business that took the most land. What's land worth in St. George? A lot. And so maybe it would be more profitable to put a subdivision where you've got piles of sand and rock. We've seen other competitors that aren't in the nursery business. We've seen people in the sand and gravel business doing that like crazy here in St. George. You know, stuff that used to be a gravel pit is now a movie theater at Sunset Corners, right? That was a gravel pit. Remember that? And so that land is super valuable as commercial property and some residential nearby. So you may want to reposition the business based on current values and things that have changed. Those all have to do with how many people you're going to need. Now you need to understand also, where is the labor market going? So let's answer that question for St. George. What do you think? Where is the labor market going in St. George? Oh, yeah.
In terms of what? Like generational?
Okay, all of it. Just where is the market going for labor in St. George?
What was construction?
Say that again?
Construction and infrastructure?
Okay. We're building a lot of stuff. 50,000 houses going up in Tokerville or something. And you go, wow, that's going to require people, right? So the labor there's going to be pressure on the labor market to grow. Where else is the labor market going? Brennan, any thoughts?
Travel. People who travel.
People.
I mean, hospitality probably, you know, for the.
Okay, so we have a opportunity to serve the people that are buzzing through town to see the trails and run the Ironman and do whatever else. We have tourism as a force on the labor market for sure. What else do we have in terms of forces on the labor market? Are kids moving in or moving out?
Moving in,
Why?
because it's too expensive to move out.
It's too expensive to move out. There's jobs here, right?
Right.
There's jobs. And what do we think is going to happen, in spite of we may not like it? What's going to happen to Utah Tech? Is it going to grow, plateau, or atrophy? What do you think?
I think that some of the classes will atrophy, others will grow. With the COVID and everybody getting real comfortable working from home, and that is where a lot of people coming into the market have experienced, and that's what they want to keep doing. They want to be able to work from home. They want remote working, right? They want that flexibility. They want to be able to come into the market or come into the office 12 hours a day and do the rest of it from home because they like that freedom. They have
12 hours a day.
or 12 hours a week, sorry.
Wow, you're
right?
a workaholic.
But, you know, they've had a taste of that, and they could see that they can live off of that. The work that they're doing can sustain that, and they can still be successful, and that's not what we're set up for. I don't want somebody working from home. I want them in the shop. I want them working.
You do, but having people that are working from home is good for our local economy because they buy
It
groceries.
is. Yeah.
They buy stuff. One of the Salisbury homes was sold down there by Desert Canyon at the end of the airport runway. What is, in my opinion now, a kind of a moderate home. It's not a $1 zillion house. I mean, it costs way more than you'd think. It's maybe probably a $700,000 house, but most of them are, or $800,000 in that neighborhood. They're all expensive homes. Talking to the guy because he's putting a pool in. And I wanted to know what he thought about the pool guy because I hadn't heard from him. He came down from Salt Lake strictly to put in his pool, and talked to him and asked him what he did for a living. And he's vice president of Walmart.com. He does all e-commerce for Walmart. His teams are all in India and Asia, and he works in his bedroom in St. George. But think about that. That's an executive level position in Walmart.com that's bringing money into St. George. So it's better that than if he didn't have a job, right? You know,
Right.
so we look, I don't know how many of those are coming to town, but I know that There didn't used to be any. And now there's some. I would never have dreamed that Walmart had an executive person here. Thought they were all in Bentonville, Arkansas. They're not. They're scattered all over. They're in constant contact with each other. You know, he said it's like he's got an ankle bracelet on. He said, if I leave the property, they know. So it might not even be a plus. But understanding and knowing where the labor market is going. None of us really do know. The answer to the university is it's growing. It's doubled in size in 5 years, and it's probably going to double again in size. Whether we agree with that growth or not, 2/3 of, no, that's more than 72% of the students at Utah Tech are married. So they've got families and households, and they're adding to our infrastructure, and they're adding to our traffic problem, and they're adding to, but to our labor force. So these are things that are positive things that are happening in our labor force. It's just being aware of it. This assessment is saying we've got the demographic trends, we're building like crazy. I don't see regulatory changes happening here in a negative way. I don't see housing compaction issues and density problems. I don't, we're not saturated density-wise. We may have people complain about some of the developments that you manage, about being too dense, too many people in too small of a spot, but you're not even close to cities. We've got a long way to go before that's considered a problem in perspective. So we've got a lot of growth here that you can read about and you can talk about, but how should that drive our business? What I like about growth also, and understanding it, is we look at our various companies here that we talk about. What happens to the cash that your company generates? Where does it come from and where does it go? There's 2 or 3 different kinds of companies here. When
Ours doesn't come from Utah. Our money incoming comes a lot from California and Colorado, mining companies, stuff like that.
Now think about that. That's under our nose, and a lot of us don't realize that. When we're selling goods and services here, some of our businesses are selling to local people, for sure. You put an awning up, that's part of real estate in St. George. And it may be paid for by somebody at the second home, may be paid for by out-of-state money, which is good if it does. But a lot of our goods and services really, the money stays it comes from St. George, it stays in St. George. But think about building a roller coaster for Knott's Berry Farm. Where does that money come from? Well, I think we all contributed to that a little bit, but it comes from California, right? Just as you said, you invoice a company in California, and they take California dollars and pay us. What does that do to our economy here locally? It's a big influx of money, and we look at how many companies are that way here. That's Ram Aerospace. How many customers does Ram Aerospace have in Washington County? None. They sell to SpaceX and Boeing, Lockheed. Where are they? Somewhere else. They ship dollars here, and our workforce gets those dollars. That's awesome. And so when we have that balance of companies, then the labor force, we have an advantage. And that's something for us to think about. If I have a chance of adding a product line, and money for that product line is going to come from out of state, that's a positive. Think about paparazzi. Paparazzi is a company that none of us understand. $5 jewelry. I thought we were trying to avoid that stuff. $5 jewelry. And some of it's cute. It's nice jewelry. It looks cool for a dance or something. It looks cool for a while. And I'm not weighing in on the quality or the value of what they're doing, but I am asking, where does the money come from? They sell their jewelry, warehouses full of their jewelry, pink warehouses full of the jewelry from Hurricane and down south off I-15. You've seen their warehouses. Where does the money come from that buys that stuff?
All over the United States.
Parties in people's basements and living rooms and houses all over the world, especially the United States, right? So people are shipping money to paparazzi from outside of Washington County. This is a good thing. We like that because that helps our economic imbalance. Because if we had to spend everything and ship money elsewhere. If you were a little town in northern Canada, what do you make at that town? Nothing. Everything you buy has to get paid for from somewhere else. When you buy from Costco, you should Costco your money. Where are they? Somewhere else. So the town, the community is losing money every day as people ship their money to buy groceries and buy goods and services that are produced outside of that town. That's an economy that's hard to sustain. If you're in a business that's like that, then you might look at what can you balance your business with. St. George Steel, building oil refinery components and heat exchangers and cooling towers and things like that. Where are those refineries? They ain't here, right? They're not here. So when you ship them, the money comes to here from somewhere far away. And I'm not sure what business you're focusing on. There was a time when St. George Steel was really dominated a segment of that business, and I don't know if you've shifted away from that or what you've got
I
going
really
on.
don't know what their projects are. I just pay the people and hire the people and do their insurance.
That's why they like you. I just pay the people. That's awesome. So regulatory can be a threat. If I ran a cabinet shop in LA County, trust me, there's a threat there. There's a significant threat. We talked about that in strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, right? If you're running a wood shop with air particles, flammable dust and explosive problems and chemistry, stain that smells bad to the neighbors and, stuff like this, that's EPA problems, LA County is not where you want your wood shop to be. And so watching the regulatory environment for your business, if you're in the wood business, is an important thing. And it won't change overnight in St. George, but it could change. And so if we're watching and we're talking to the county commissioners and we're talking to the political powers that be from time to time, we'll get wind of things if there's a change. Housing density changes, as that occurs, it will, but we'll get wind of it.
We, in Hurricane S&S Steel, when we built, the city came to my dad and proposed that they build there. They really wanted people to come in and do business there in that commercial area, and so they gave us a great deal, and we came in, and there was no houses, there was nothing back there, no golf course, and then people built around us, and then we've had multiple people, not lately, complain about the air quality and the noise and everything, and the EPA has come out multiple times and tested us, and we've always been in compliance, but it's just been a rough thing because they built all around us and we were there first.
You were there first, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, these
So
are,
it does happen here.
it definitely does, and these are the kind of threat issues that we're talking about, is if that were to get the climate changed on that, Now sometimes you can come out good when the climate changes on that. There's an exit off I-15 as you're going north before you get to Springville, south of that, can't remember the name of that. There's nothing at the exit except a plant on the west side of this street. Does anybody know where I'm talking about? You come down over a hill and there's an empty valley and there's a factory. So that factory was in Draper on 122nd Street south, where all the shopping centers are at. And it was a cattle farm and a rendering plant where you take dead cattle and they cook them to make fat out of them and lard and stuff like that. And sometimes it smells okay, but most of the time it doesn't. And the city of Draper was just on them and on them and on them. And they were there first. They'd been there for years. That's where you took your dead animals and they processed them to the rendering plant. And the guy that owned it had the presence of mind to say, look, they can't force me out of here. They can maybe, but it's wrong. And so what I want them to do is buy me out of here. What I want them to do is use their government power to find a piece of property somewhere that they can get from the BLM or Forest Service or somewhere that's got freeway access where I can stink up the place and nobody will care. And they'll buy the land and they'll build my plant. And if they do that, I'll give them my plant and give them my land. And he made that happen. Didn't happen on the first meeting. And it took a while for that. But think about that. When you've got something that they want to take away from you, you're landlocked where you're at. And it might not be such a bad idea.
We've approached them to do that, but they would have to shut us down for months, and they'd have to pay us for our time that we were shut down. And
Or-
I don't know if Hurricane City wants to do that.
Or build it for, they don't. You'd have to it'd be a hard negotiation.
Mhm.
You'd have to negotiate that they would have to get you up and running,
Yeah.
somehow,
We'd have
either
to take
taking
our
capacity,
downtime.
somehow, figuring it out, in order to possibly make that happen. So far, right now, you're okay.
Yeah.
But these are the kind of threats that we want to talk about as we're looking at labor requirements. Because if you get a chance to move and you grow in that move, now all of a sudden your labor projections are different. And we want to be ready for that with how we're going to pay for those labor projections. All right. So based on what we're going to do and based on what the trends are with the labor pool, where are the gaps? What are our talent demands? What are we facing that we need to start working on right now? We saw architectural companies going to, all surveying being done by drones. Nobody knew how to run a drone. Nobody knew how to do to set lot pins to aerial geography, and we had to train a whole new bit of a workforce to do that. We run bulldozers off of architectural drawings for a ramp. How much the grade. The driver doesn't touch the steering wheel. The computer runs it all and bulldozes the grade they need. Nobody knew how to run those before. And so those changes, that talent demand, all of a sudden we needed guys that understood GPS. We need guys that know how to fly a drone. We need an entire set of new talents because of what's happening to the industry. And so that's something that we want to have thought through and be ready for. And then who do we have right now? This is overlooked a lot of time. The talent that we have in-house, we have people that have hobbies and have interests and have pretty impressive skill sets. And so knowing what our inventory is of people, who do we have that wants to do more, that wants to learn more, that wants to grow more, that wants to contribute more? And most companies have, a handful of these people that are just chomping at the bit. They want to add more value. And so there's an opportunity for us to figure out how can we develop the skill sets that we need and that they want to do in order to participate. Typically, we see we've got 4 options, which are kind of trite. These aren't mine. These come from a consulting firm in Chicago. Build, bounce, buy, or borrow. That's as far as people is concerned. We can build people, add to their skill sets. We can bounce them, which means promote them out the door, and that's not a very good, humane option in most cases. We can buy more talent, and we can sometimes borrow talent from partners and customers and suppliers that will help us develop what we need. And then we put it into play, we implement it, and that's strategic workforce planning. That is a process that never stops. That makes sense? So that's it in summary. We had a slide for each one of those things. We're going to be done with that. And I want to move on. It is coming near break time, and I got a couple things I want us to see first, and then we're going to go into problem solving. But I want us to watch a couple of short videos that are looking at this topic. Those of you that are working in HR full time, this becomes a reporting mechanism. And if you're working in a large organization, for example, we can look at the state of Utah's workforce planning process, and it's a published document, and we can see what the state of Utah is looking at as far as state employees are concerned. That covers universities and highway departments and all kinds of jobs, right? Lots and lots and lots of jobs. But what I want us to do right now, I want us to get familiar with a couple of things that we have available to us in terms of these jobs. Let's see what. The first one I want us to look at, you're going to want to write an address down, I think. We're looking at something called the ONET. And it's not the internet, but this is Department of Labor. And most people don't know about the ONET. And I want you to get familiar with the ONET a little bit. The first thing I want you to do with the ONET is I want you to look up how much money you should be making in zip code 84770. And it will tell you that based on your job description. If you want to know what your job description should be, it will be probably on the ONET. There are some odd jobs that aren't gotten to yet. But the ONET is the Department of Labor's database about what jobs entail, what skill sets are needed, and what money they pay. Now, Indeed.com gives us an idea, but we've all learned that that's not very accurate. Some companies will pump up the amount of money that they say they're paying, when in reality they're not. They're going, well, if you were a perfectly qualified candidate, that's what we would pay, but you're dumber than a log, so you make less, or whatever, it is that they say. So the government, it gives us more accurate information, I believe. So we're going to look at an 11-minute video on how to use the ONET, presented by another person with the blessing of the Department of Labor. So let's take a look at this on how she uses the ONET.
Hey, it's Dr. J. Hi, everybody. I wanted to do a quick video on ONET. I've had a lot of questions about ONET and why I think it's such a fantastic tool, what else you can use it for, things like that. So I'm going to do a quick video for you. So this is ONET. If you type in ONET, you'll get it. If you type in ONETONLINE.org, you'll still get it. But normally you just Google ONET and it pops up. Okay? So, the first things first, the occupational quick search. So when you're in ONET and you're trying to figure out a certain job classification or a certain job career or series, and you're just trying to gain more information about something, this is the perfect place to find it. All right, so here I'm going to use human resources popped up as my example and hit enter. So under the quick search, you get all these iterations of potentially what human resources would be or what you're looking for. So just so happens that the very first one, human resources specialist, is the one I was looking for. So we're here in the summary report. So the summary report is really important because it not only gives you a summary of the knowledge, skills, and abilities, aka the KSAs, it also gives you all of the other types of positions that also includes human resources. Okay? I think that's just fascinating for those that just need a little bit more information about it. So, under tasks, the little plus sign allows you to see more of what's there. So how am I going to use this for my resume, Dr. J? I am so glad you asked me. So the way you use ONET to create your resume is, so you search for your current position. Say you're an HR specialist, and this is what you were looking for, but you don't know all of the details that you've actually been doing. So with ONET, you can simply copy and paste anything you want, save it to a Word document, and once you save it to a Word document, you can then move it over to your resume or to a platform that you're trying to beef up your background. Another fantastic tool in ONET is the technology skills. So because we all use technology in our day-to-day work, no matter if we work in janitorial services or a landscaper, we're going to be using technology in one way, shape, or form or another, okay? So you're going to go to technology skills. Again, click on the plus sign. This shows you all of the technology that you're either using or potentially need to start using. It's just, it's amazing. So data mining, I've talked about that. Data mining is really important because it's something that agencies and recruiters use to kind of weed out applications that don't have the keywords or reference to the job announcement they have. All right, I'll have another video for that. So we go further down, knowledge, same thing, click on the plus sign. And you can break this down and put this in your resume so it has a qualitative factor, not just showing all the statistics that you've done, but also outlining how you've done those things. Going down to skills, same thing here. These are some basic skills. What I love about skills is it talks about things that you normally don't know you need to do that particular job. So for this example, active learning, the understanding of implications of new information for both current and future problem solving and decision making, which also means you need to learn how to critically think and how to handle problems in a very professional leadership way, so that way you're successful in this particular position. Abilities, the same thing. Some of those that are working in human resources don't realize that they may have to do some oral presentations. They may have to train others. And so this kind of goes into those things that you may not think about when you're looking at a new position. Work activities. So work activities is interesting also because, like I was just saying, training and teaching others. As a human resources specialist, a lot of us don't think of HR specialists as teaching and training others. They look at it as, employee advocates, things like that. But there's a lot of different facets to human resources. All right, detailed work activities. This is just interesting because it reiterates some of the same things that were just said. So if you just skip down to the detailed work activities, you can also get a synopsis of how this position functions and flows within an organization. All right, work context. So job zone is interesting because this gives you a overall idea of what you're going to be doing, right? The education that's required, which is really important. So if you're looking into going to human resources specialist and you don't have a bachelor's, more than likely you will need to earn or obtain a bachelor's in order to become an HR specialist, right? Not always true, but you could also be an HR assistant or an executive assistant, but to be a specialist, that's a certain educational background. And right here, so this shows 47% of the people currently working as human resources specialists have their bachelor's. That's what it's showing, all right? Another thing that is really nifty about ONET is the credentials. So say you're looking to go into HR and you need to find some training. You could click on the Find Training button or the Find Certifications, and it will link you to other aspects of human resources training that you may not have known about. Also apprenticeship.gov, which is also linked to USA Jobs, which I have another video about. Okay, work styles, you need to have some integrity. You need to be able to cooperate with people. You need to have some attention to detail. You need to be dependable. So all of these are characteristics for you to either learn and develop, or just make sure that you're currently doing those things and showing how you're the best candidate for the position if you're putting in for these positions. All right, so some related occupations. This kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about before with all of the other positions. And so these kind of link, but there's probably some different educational backgrounds for all of these. So I know for sure, fraud examiners, you have to have a fraud examining certification in order to work as a fraud examiner, okay? So this is the fun part, wages and employment trends. So I love ONET because it is so open and honest and transparent. So this says the median wages of 2018 were $29.27, okay? The median salary was $60,000. That's what it was. So say you want to figure out what your local is, because these are not geographically mutually exclusive. So clicking on the local and then taking you to your state will show you how much an HR specialist gets paid in your actual geographical area. All right? Something else interesting it says projected growth, meaning that how fast will this particular position grow, and is it worth it for me to get a bachelor's, and will there be a job ready for me? That's what this is basically telling you. And this is saying yes. So this says projected growth between 2018 and 2028 is an average of 4 to 6%. Okay? Now that does not include people that retire. That does not include that. Okay? Projected openings, 67,000 openings between 2018 and 2028. And then the state trends. So you can always click on there, find your state, and see the trends. All right. They also have a nifty little job site that takes you to different platforms. But overall, this is ONET, and this is a fantastic way of figuring out and finding what you need when you need it. And if you want to go back, the highlighted one is always your last saved, which is always wonderful. And as I said again, all you got to do is put it in here. I put in actor. I mean, they have every job. This is actually the link to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So any position and job that has been created, there is a job description, knowledge, skills, and abilities in here for you to review and for you to get some insight on what it takes to be in that position. Just for fun, let's click on actor. Okay, so, I mean, this is wonderful. Summary report. Plays parts in the stage, television, radio, video, motion picture productions. So if you did not know all the things an actor can do, they could be on stage, aka Broadway, television, radio, video, or motion picture productions. It's wonderful. And these are all the different characteristics. Actor, actress, comedian, comic, community theater actor. It's really amazing. Brings on the tasks. These are some of the tasks that an actor has to do. This is some of the technology an actor has to be familiar with. So like I said, no matter what position you're looking at going in, or what position you're currently in, or if you're trying to just beef up your resume, ONET is a fantastic way to do that and do it successfully. So if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to contact.
So I use that as just an introduction to ONET. My sole purpose is as an employer. How many times have I had to write a job description for somebody, and I really don't know what they do? I have had to write job descriptions where the boss told me my own job description. Well, you know what you do, just write that down. That's not a very good job description for the company, and it leaves the company hanging out in the breeze. This is a resource to say what the job description should be for positions that we're hiring for, and it also says what you should pay, and it gives adjustment by zip code. And so if there's anybody here in St. George that are employed in that category, it'll show the range of where they're at. It'll show median and the high and the low.
We get screwed because we're like the lowest paid people in the United States, but we have a higher cost of living than a lot of places.
You're talking to the choir here. I agree with that.
And so when my bosses look at the wages that they say I'm supposed to get, they'll look at a payroll clerk, but I'm like also handling all the hires, like all of the benefits, like administering all of the retirement, doing all of the quarterly taxes, all that stuff. That's not what a payroll clerk does.
That's where you pick up from the job duties. You see that you're doing a lot more than those job duties, so you start looking for what is the real title of what you're doing. It might be vice president.
That's what I'm gonna do.
You know, and so start looking for what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
For you know, my purpose here isn't for everybody to complain to their boss about what they're getting paid. It's more to kind of understand the tool that's out there. And she said transparent. We should be transparent. We should know where we stand. And you know, we know the old arguments that you get, it's a beautiful place to live, and you get to go to Zion, and all this. This is a resort that people travel to, and all that stuff. But we still pay that. And all we can do there is to say we want to pay fairly in line with what other people for similar positions in this market are making. Now, if you really want to retain people, and if you really think they're going to move to Salt Lake or move to LA, then it's time to have a heart-to-heart discussion to see what you can negotiate to get a fair pay that doesn't set you up for failure, because it's not all about money. We say that over and over again, but it really is not all about money. Money is an important driver. We have to pay enough to take money off the table as a problem, but it's not just money. Most companies, if you tie a performance indicator to it of some sort, say, well, how about if I do this and this, would you pay me more? And so maybe you make a sliding scale based on what you do. And that way they don't pay you if you don't do it. They pay you if you do it, if you achieve it. If I hit this home run, what would that be worth to you to do that? And you've got to have a boss that wants you to start that conversation. So if you're on the bubble, don't start the conversation. Get yourself on solid ground and then have the conversation, because the boss doesn't want to lose you about money either. They need to pay, and one of the things that we have to prepare as we're negotiating salaries and wages, in either way, we have to help the person that we're negotiating with prepare their victory speech. When the negotiation is done, they have to feel like they won. And you can't feel like you got lacerated either. You've got to feel like you reached a fair agreement, but you've got to help them give their victory speech, because they're going to have to go to your dad and tell him why that deal was a fair deal. And if you can explain it to this owner, you've helped them prepare the victory speech. So I kept the person that it would cost us a fortune to lose. We've got somebody that's completely trained, committed. You know, we list the factors of why this is worth it in this circumstance. And that's not a magic wand. It doesn't work with all bosses. Some bosses are Scrooges. They're tightwads, and they're not gonna, in that case, you're probably on the wrong boss. You probably need to look at an organization that's paying Mason-Dixon wages or something, you know, and because usually when you get those, that means you're out of town. That means you know, so if the trade-offs come to light, you go, okay, yeah, he does make $10 an hour more than you do, but his kids don't know his name, because he's on job sites in Texas and Louisiana. I'm not telling you how to negotiate. This tool is one to help us post for jobs, help us look at the qualifications and the requirements and the skills that we're trying to hire for, and it will help us match people up to say, this is a hard job. This isn't something you already, so you think you've done this job. Look at what it requires. And maybe they have done it, but they'll appreciate more the value of their own value if they use a tool like this. A couple other things I want to say before let's see where we're at. I've got some uniform guidelines, a 3-minute video that I got time for, and want to take a break. There are laws on guidelines of how we select employees. A lot of ways for us to break the law by giving them a test that's not validated, giving them a test that we don't give to everybody else. Some sort of selection criteria that we use. It's not fair and even across the board. I was going to show a video of Griggs versus Duke Power, one of the preliminary cases that happened back in the 1970s. When I first moved to Chicago, the truth was there was a sign on all Chicago transit buses, black people rode in the back of the bus. I remember that. The gas stations you went to, they had white bathrooms and black bathrooms. And I don't think I'm that old. This was after the Black Panther riots in the Chicago Democratic Convention that happened in 1968. This was 6 years after that. It was still a hideous environment from a equality perspective. That's just not okay. Duke Power was found that they hired people that had a high school diploma and gave them white people jobs, and the people that did not have high school diplomas in the Carolinas were black people. They had finished school, and so they were shown by the United States Supreme Court that that was an unfair bias against people that had not had the opportunity to finish school. And that became, 50 years later, we haven't overturned that rule. It's still the law. And it should be the law that we don't want to accidentally have biases that hire or don't hire any people for any difference that we have. And so that's the law as we build our team, as we build our And I just want to remind us that because in HR, that becomes an important thing that we talk about. So I won't show that video, but I will show the uniform guidelines of employer selection, 3 minutes, and we'll take a break.
Hi folks, Kevin Keller here again, talking to you more about design of jobs. I'm going to talk to you a little bit here today about things that we require, things we measure, and things that we reward. We do this all the time. What we may be unaware of is that there is a document, the federal law, that requires us to do this in a very precise way. And that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. It's called the 1978 Uniform Selection Guidelines. And it requires that an employer do a little homework before they go about hiring people and rewarding them through HR decisions like transfer, retention, and employment. Basically, it says this: anytime you design a job or functions of a job, you need to be tying that to what had been identified as essential functions of the job. I'm not speaking to you here as a lawyer, I'm speaking to you here as a practical person and how this thing really works in the real world. For example, when you write a job description, you don't sit down and just make that crap up. It is the product of research that is done in a job analysis phase, where you consider a number of things: the unique needs of your community. You speak to the abilities and strengths and capabilities of your organization, your setting, your unique needs as a community for what you need your police and fire department to do. That's the important part that is rarely seen, is the research phase, and that is the part that is not just good housekeeping, but actually required by federal law in the 1978 Uniform Selection Guidelines. What I like to do is give you an example here of a building foundation. In this example, you'll see here several cement blocks, each of them labeled as a job description, performance appraisals, physical agility tests, assessment centers, and such. We see these things all the time, and I want you to think of them as cement blocks that create a supportive wall for that which a house sits on, our business. Before we start building and erecting this block wall, if you go there early on, you'll see they lay this trench of cement first. That's called footings. It makes sure that all those individual cement blocks remain stable, and they don't crack, and they don't fall apart, and they support what they're supposed to support. The footing is very important as you build a house. It's the first thing you build. It is the first constructive element of the house. So too when you design jobs, you lay a footing, and your footing is your job analysis, your customized approach to what do we need this job to look like. Upon that, you lay your blocks of job description, performance appraisal, assessment centers, physical agility requirements. As we get into this unit, you will have a chance to work with tools that have been used to conduct job analysis. But don't forget, this is the research phase of your job design. Just as back in high school, when you did those 3x5 cards on research in the library for a paper, when you were done with those, you wrote your paper. Your paper was the product, and the research went in the bottom drawer. So too in your HR office, a job analysis rests there someplace, and the things like job description, all those other things are the products of this phase. This is an important phase, not just for good housekeeping, as I said. This is required by federal law, and it's important we do this right.
Most of the companies in St. George, except for the ones that have corporate offices outside of St. George, don't do this. And we're hanging out, that's not okay. We need to up our game and do it right. Then the tool, the ONET gives us a tool on how to build the requirements for the job. I've got a lot of owners of companies I've talked to who've never done it. They know they need to hire somebody and we want them to be a supervisor. And we don't talk about what they need to do and what they don't, so they don't know going in what will allow them to be successful or fail. So that is the federal law that we have to do that, and there's more to it. The handout, one of the handouts that you've got says some more about that. We are going to take a break right now. I will see you back at 7 o'clock, or 8 o'clock, right? No, 7 o'clock. See you back at 7 o'clock. 8 o'clock is really what, thank you. Yeah, see you back in 9 minutes, okay?
Why are you so tired today? It's only Tuesday.
Oh, I sleep like shit.
You have to write it up.
I know, I have that.
Party, you write up everything.
Paulo, Jose Cuervo got real friendly, so
Huh?
me and Paulo, Jose Cuervo got real friendly.
See?
Apparently it was gone.
Well, stop smoking pot, so I have to pick up another bad habit, right?
Fair enough, I suppose. You probably don't need either one. Probably cooler than you think all by yourself.
Oh, man. When your foreman comes up to you, it's like, oh, dude, you gotta try this recipe for margaritas. Ooh, I think I do.
I got a blender that I made and I just started it up. It's I took a weed whacker motor and mounted it under a stainless table on a stainless steel blender. And it's cool, you can fire it up. And I've got a motorcycle handlebar to run it up, you know, like that. It's cool.
That's slick.
Yeah. DI weed whacker for $10.
It's much cheaper than a blender now, dude.
Yeah.
So, you're from Chicago or like Chicago? There is a TV show called The Bear that just came out, and it has the guy who plays Liv from Shameless as the main lead, and he's a chef for a sandwich shop in Chicago. And he got the sandwich shop because his brother committed suicide and kind of passed it down to him. But he's like a high-end chef, and so it starts the whole series of him kind of walking through the kitchen, calling people chef, this, that, in between. And I watched it all while we were still in the leadership section and stuff, and I was like, I would totally do this, but it kind of shows how some of his employees started to kind of come along under his leadership. And on it goes, but it's a pretty good TV show.
Is it a real place?
No, well, probably is, but where they filmed it and stuff like that. But it's about like making beef sandwiches in Chicago and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And about how he had to have cash to pay the meat guy, and the meat guy was shortchanging him because he wasn't paying cash or wasn't paying on time or this or that, you know. And it was pretty cool. So
Typical Chicago
season
stuff.
season two's gonna be pretty interesting.
That sounds cool. Scout around for
Yeah,
that.
it's called The Bear, but it was pretty
Bear.
good.
And of course, the Bears. Chicago.
Well, his last name was Barongo or something like that, so it's B-E-R, and so they just called him Bear.
Okay.
And his sister called him Bear.
Did you at one
His
time?
sister Sugar or something like that, so that's
Oh.
what they
Yeah.
had called him and stuff like
I
that.
know they have like tons of
But,
people live there.
Or we just go hang out.
yeah, just called him Bear, but the guy lived from Shameless, he plays kind of the same kind of
I
character.
didn't hang out with
you know.
anyone.
I don't know if you watch Shameless, but that's in Chicago.
I did, but
So, yeah, that TV show Shameless in the U.S. version based out of Chicago.
okay. Okay. I'm behind on my
Also,
TV.
lose like for long stretches of time.
When you have COVID, you
That's true. You
Catch
would.
up real quick, don't you?
Yeah.
watch the whole series of The Bear in like one day, and every day I watch almost one season of
Yeah.
Animal Kingdom.
So I'm caught up on that one too.
Okay, if you've got these handouts that say, have the quizzes on them, one's got 5 questions and the other's got 15, I think, or 16. You can stay on break, but when you come back, we're gonna work on those briefly.
You don't
basically,
Oh, the other side, yeah.
if you go really,
Oh, no.
you start hearing very loud music, and you see like really shitty looking taco stands, delicious. You probably will get this place now.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Just
I got a Thai massage down there somewhere about like 2 weeks ago, I believe. It was legit, she walked from me. She's like, you want me to do any pressure? I'm like, gosh, I can't walk on you. I'm like, are you serious? She totally did, she massaged me with her feet. I'm like, what? She was dressing me, holding me in the feet and stuff. I was like, I never had a massage like this in St.
nice to have a lot of family out there. So,
Jude.
yeah, it's always when you're going back. It's weird when we came out, so people that look at me in the fire, fucking believe me. The people there do it sometimes. Like, we don't look at each other. I'm driving next to you, you don't look at me. I don't look at you.
We're trying to win, so I have to work that, you know, every day, you know, clock, 10 o'clock at night.
Where at?
It's just like, community falls in the lab and whatnot, so. It's weird now, cause as soon as,
Oh, you have to.
yeah, as soon as I step out the door, you guys play clock and maybe it's 10 o'clock at night.
I don't do that. Like as soon as I clock out, like, but little Dixie customer service stays goes right.
I'm always nice, even at home.
It's like on my mail, like I do it at 11 o'clock, because I'm engaging in getting that conversation about, you know, your air conditioning, can you have them like check? Yeah. The two, it's me and one guy.
No, you should hire him over it.
Yeah, it's a lot, I really,
Alright, if you would, I want us to start on this 5-question, 4 problem-solving styles. I want us to just look at those for a second, because as we manage people, most of them aren't the same as we are. Below are 5 sets of words or phrases. Trusting the first thing that comes to mind, rank the items in each set from 1 through 4. 1 is the most preferred, 4 is the least preferred. In each set, be sure to write a different number next to each item. There are no right or wrong or better or worse answers, just your style. So you need to put 1, 2, 3, and 4 in order from most preferred to the least preferred. And you can start 4, 3, 2, 1 if you like to start with the least preferred for you. There's only 5 statements, so take a minute and answer those 5 statements if you would. If you get them answered, you can go to the bottom of the page and see the scoring instructions. You're going to put the number by the number and letter of your ranking in that matrix. And be careful, it's not exactly in order. And you're going to add those up. We're filling out the 5 questions on the 4 problem-solving styles. copy your answer onto the matrix at the bottom of the page, add each column up, and circle the column number with the lowest number.
What if you're like, so I got 12, 13, 13, 12. Do I
Yeah.
pick one?
No, circle the two 12s.
Okay. How often would you consider that these would change?
They do. Situationally, they change too, based on circumstances. I will ask you each to kind of double check it again on your own, because technically we should have the total number should add up excuse me, to 60. And if they don't, then maybe there's a math error. But what I want to do is I want to look at the 4 problem-solving styles. If you will kind of just ask for a informal, one of the styles is a diplomat. And I'm going to ask you to just read around the room each bullet for the diplomat. And we'll start with Eli when you got just a second. I'm not asking you to stop doing the quiz, just multiple process here for a second.
Interested in reaching consensus.
Okay, the second one, Joelle,
Learns best from talking to those involved.
Josie,
Often values opinion more than facts.
Brad,
Focuses on practical solutions.
Larry.
I'm sorry, I'm lost at where we're at.
Under diplomat, next to the last
Right here,
one.
read that one.
Yeah, I don't have my reading glasses. It can be very persuasive.
That's why I've got to put it on the screen here, because I don't know my reading
yeah.
glasses. Sorry about that. And Andrew,
Needs to guard against groupthink and short-sightedness.
so these are really 5 things that are positive about the pure diplomat. Did anybody, so far, if you got the score, is that your scoring a diplomat? A couple of you are diplomatic in your approach. Let's keep reading and let's look about the professor. If you scored yourself with a P, Jake will keep going with you.
Interested in underlying concepts and theories. Seeks lots of historical background information.
Learns from relationships to other situations.
Values detachment from conditions.
Back to Eli.
Relates to others by giving and getting information.
Needs to guard against indecision and impracticality.
Now, the thing with the professor is there's always more information to collect, and there's a problem with that. So if that's your problem-solving style, there's a whole bunch of benefits from it, right? The 5 benefits that are there, what we guard against is, give somebody permission to get you off the dime and make a decision. That's one of my tendencies. What other professors do we have in the room? I'm the only one, I'm bad problem solver. Okay, let's keep going on detective, and we're Josie.
Interested in finding the cause of the problem.
Focuses on relevant facts.
First, to make direct observations of situations.
Tends to follow a consistent method or process.
Tries to establish clear cause and effect relationship.
Okay.
Needs to guard against inflexibility and insensitivity to people.
So the detective wants to follow their program, and not necessarily, bend to what other opinions are and stuff. It's like, I'm on track here, and that'll be tied with 5 pluses for detectives. Those are real strengths. Who else do we have that are
I figured
detectives?
out
in
I'm
here?
not diplomat.
Couple of detective diplomats, a couple of you, okay? And then finally, we've got the champions, and we left off with Eric.
Interested in results.
Finds a solution by trying it out.
Back to you, Eli.
Wants to achieve success without help from others.
Trust his or her instincts.
Good in a crisis situation when there's no time for analysis.
Needs to guard against impulsiveness or uncooperative.
So sometimes it's kind of interesting just to take a problem that your team's working on and say, you know, we need all of these really. We need the professor to study the cause and effect. We need the detective to look under all the rocks. We need the diplomat to smooth things out between others. And then when it's time to act, we need the champion that's gonna run in there and get it done. And sometimes we don't have time to do all four. Building's on fire, I don't want the professor. I want the champion. Let's get in there and fix it. You know, let's get out here and get out alive, and we'll go back later and do a root cause analysis of what started the fire. So that's just a rather whimsical tool, if you would, that can get a team on the track of saying we have different styles and that's okay. We need each of those different styles in solving problems. And so I think it's a value for that. Then I also want to look at the other handout that you have there, decision-making skills for mind tools. And we're not going to take the time in class today to go through that. It says it's an 8-minute read if you do the test. So I want you to understand a little bit about force field analysis, because we're going to pick that up and talk about that as a business force, understanding what is holding us back. And if we can remove what's holding us back, sometimes that's the same as pushing harder to achieve a goal. It makes it easier to achieve. So we see the force field analysis in there, and you've got that handout and had that for a while. Then we have a quiz that goes with it, problem solving skills test, which is a 20-minute read, which that 8 minutes includes the taking the test, which is 16 questions. This one, you are answering 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 based on which column you check, and then you're going to add up the math and do the math, look at the total. Now, if you want to look this one up online, you can take that test online and it'll do that for you. So you can go to that webpage that I referenced there, and you can take this skill test, and then you can read where you're at. The first group of 16 to 36, 37 to 58, or if you are 59 to 80. If you can score 59 to 80 on that test, then you should be teaching problem solving. That's something that your organization can use, your skill sets. And if we score below that, then we need you to study it a little bit, that's all. Doesn't mean we're not good at it, it just means we need to study it a little bit. All right, I want to go to the think model, and I want us to walk through this one page of a think model. We're going to watch what Toyota has to say, and we're going to bake that into our problem-solving methodology. This model is a one-page model, and the idea, we start at the left side of the page and we move our way to the right side of the page. I used this model at an aerospace manufacturer they had one customer, it was Boeing. They made aircraft parts. It was actually a company that I used to work for in a different lifetime, and then I wound up being a consultant for them. And the problem was Boeing said we were going to fire you as a vendor, and because they were behind on shipping, and Wiley can understand this issue. You got more orders than you can get delivered, and that's a huge problem that you have to solve somehow. In the case of this company's in Spanish Fork, Utah. They were 80,000 man-hours behind schedule for Boeing. Enough so that they had Boeing's full attention, and Boeing said, we need an office for the next year at your factory, and we're going to give you a chance to fix this, and if you don't, we're not going to use you as a supplier anymore. And that was a big deal, because that meant that they had to take jet fighter parts back through requalification in the Air Force. They don't want to do that if they don't have to. Once they've got a part qualified, they want that vendor to make them, as long as they got those airplanes in the sky. So they did not want to go through that. They wanted the problem to get fixed. They invested in one of their engineers, they gave him an office in Spanish Fork, and his job was to help them solve the problem. And so, he called me, our paths had crossed in the past, and he said, can you help us? And I said, I don't know, let's take a look at this. And we sat down with this piece of paper, and we solved the problem together, not me, as a team. We solved the problem of them being 80,000 man-hours behind schedule. The way he did it is just use this model. And there's times in my life that I should have used this model, I didn't. So the left column, what is the left column? We are taking the problem and we're making a list of what?
Symptoms.
The symptoms. This is what the doctor does. You go in, your knee hurts. So what are all the symptoms? Well, I put weight on it. When you jump, when you're just walking, when you're taking steps, they ask questions about your symptoms, and they collect a list of the symptoms. And from the list of the symptoms that they think are relevant, the next step you do in the next column is what?
Causes.
A list of the possible causes of each of those symptoms. So another time, I had a water-cooled Porsche 944. Porsches don't make water-cooled engines. They're all air-cooled engines, as you know, and they weren't very good at water-cooled engines. But there was a specific category for that car, and I wanted to race in that category, so I had one. And I opened up the coolant for the radiator, and there was mud in it. It was muddy. Well, what is that? And somebody took a scoop out of the radiator and said, that is oil. It's coagulated and it's mixed with the antifreeze in your car, and that means, my friend, you have a blown head gasket. Everybody knows it. The symptom was I had watery, oily radiator stuff. Car was overheating too, by the way. That's another symptom, right? And so the solution was, the root cause was, that's a head gasket. So I know about head gaskets. I took the engine apart in my garage and I put a head gasket in the car. Drove it a little while, same thing happened again. So it wasn't the head gasket. I said, I don't know what it is. I went to Dave Strong Porsche in Salt Lake, and I said, here's what I did. And they said, well, obviously you don't know how to replace a head gasket. You should have hired a Porsche dealer. We know how to do it. And so they replaced the head gasket. They didn't call me to pick the car up, and I stopped by and said, how come? It's been too long. Are you having trouble with parts? They go, no, we replaced it, but it's doing the same thing for us. And I said, oh, okay, imagine that. And they said, but it's your fault, because what happened was, when you did it wrong, it's an aluminum block and aluminum head. You warped the block and the head, and so now even with a good head gasket in there, it's not going to seal. So you've warped. So what has to happen? You have to pull the block out and the heads, and you have to machine them flat again. Well, at Dave Strong Porsche, that's an expensive proposition, but I did it, and they put it back together, and we had the same problem. It overheated, had oil in the antifreeze. And by this time I'm going, guys, I've spent way too much money on this. Let's, we take the car and trade, you never know. Might as well ask, right? And so they didn't know where to go at that point. But what they needed to do was go here. Because it turns out, was it a head gasket? Everybody made an assumption that those symptoms and those possible causes, they forgot to think about it, lead to a head gasket being bad. But since Porsche doesn't know how to make water-cooled engines, it was a new experiment for them at the time, they had put a water circulation pump in the side of the engine block that was driven by the same gear that drives your camshafts. Two overhead cams on the car. And that has a seal around it. That seal was $4. And when that seal leaked, it pushed water into the oil system. We didn't do that. And if we don't do that, you wind up with an expensive solution because you fixed what's not wrong. And I could tell you more stories about doing that and not using this. I had a car that was going, the battery was going dead on it. Battery's going dead. I buy a new battery, put a new battery in. Battery goes dead. Somebody says it's your alternator. I put a new alternator in. Battery goes dead. And if I had taken the time to list the symptoms, like I teach, the symptoms were that when I'm at a stoplight, I get the electronic system lighting up. The brakes aren't quite as Mercedes. The brakes weren't quite right, and different functions on that car. It was an S, 500S was the car, sedan. And it's getting all these electronic messages to me that says when I'm at a light. But when I leave the light, the messages go away, everything's fine. But I didn't write that down. It also, I had problems at night. I was commuting back and forth to Salt Lake in that car at the time, and my headlights were pulsing. And I wasn't sure quite why, but I had two 20-inch subs in the trunk and a pretty nice amplifier that was going, so when the subs would hit, the headlights would dim. Okay. So now we're closer, right? We've listed more symptoms, and we have more possible causes. Now in that car, I'm sorry to say, it sounded like I was just 19 years old or something, but I wasn't. It was hard. You had to hit the subs hard on that car because the gas tank was between the trunk and the engine compartment. And Mercedes likes the cars to be really quiet, and there's 2 panes of glass, and all kinds of insulation and sound deadeners and stuff inside the car. So you can't hear the subs. So you got to really, really hit them to hear them inside. And you can't port it because the gas tank is there, and you have to go through some gymnastics to do it. By the time I did all that, I had an amp that was drawing way too much power and a alternator that was incapable of producing that much voltage to drive the amp. So I had a choice at that point. I had to get a better alternator, which Mercedes didn't make one. I bought one off of a Cat D9 bulldozer and had a guy fix it, and it worked. But only until we got to the root problem. The root problem was I wasn't making enough voltage. So why was the lights, it was dimming because I was sucking power when the subs hit. The lights were all coming on at a stoplight because the voltage level on the car at idle was dropping below what was necessary to run the emergency braking system. And the stuff, there's certain voltage necessary. I wasn't producing that. If I'd have made a list of the stuff, an amateur tech could have said, "You idiot, unplug your stereo and you're fine." And it would have been. I mean, it wasn't what I wanted to do, but it would have been fine. It's fine. I didn't have car problems. I had amplifier problems because I didn't go through what could cause this, what could cause that, what could cause that. So the doctor, I got a sore throat. The doctor's going, what could possibly cause it? Gets the symptoms of when it's sore. It's sore in the morning. It's sore after I talk and teach a class. It's not, by the way. But let's suppose I've got these symptoms, and the doc goes through the symptoms, and you go, what are the possible causes? One of the possible causes is throat cancer, right? And that's the one I'm worried about, right? But that's a possible cause. Does it match with all the rest of the symptoms? The answer to that, thankfully, is no. So a good thinking process is going to look at the symptoms, what could cause each one, and as you think about it, you circle the common cause. Your alternator isn't strong enough. Alternator isn't strong enough. Alternator isn't strong enough. You got a leak in the water coolant system. It's pumping into the oil somewhere. That would have been on every one of those. And I'd have had a $5 fix, not a, I don't even want to know what that cost. It was way too much. I didn't even want to sell the car when it was done. That's a big hole. So we think and think and think about what the right root causes are. With the Boeing scenario, they had factory turnover and inadequate training for the new team members. And they were trying to go to real teams, and they were trying to teach people too fast how to be a team member, and it wasn't going to ever work. And they're making bad parts for Boeing. And so one of the two solutions, there were two, and one of them had to do with the training system. Fixed the training system, and the quality problems went away. And now all we have to do is get back on schedule. So that's not easy to do. Once you're back up, that was the second problem that had to be addressed. Of how do we get back on schedule on this? And that involved reallocating space and a lot of other things. I found a warehouse there. They had an entire warehouse full of seated RPGs that they'd sold to the Israelis or something, and the military cats of the order, and they had, I don't know, 10,000 of them were sitting there or something. They were the coolest things I'd ever seen, but they took a ton of space. They were in manufacturing space. It's like, well, you can't work because you can't move, right? And so, 5S the place. I know those were expensive, but you can't sell them. It's not legal, unless you want to run them. If you want to run them across the border, I think weapons sales might be kind of a fun thing to do, but not and get caught. So once we have a root cause identified, or more than one, sometimes there's more than one, we then, what do?
Analyze possible solutions.
Possible solutions. We got a bad bearing in the blender. This is the ice cream blender, the big one. Makes all the Baskin Robbins stuff. Got a bad bearing in the bottom of it. What do? We go down, we're behind further with Baskin Robbins. It's summer. People want their 31 flavors. So we can't really possible options. We can buy a new motor, it's got a bearing in it. We can rebuild that one. We can go to the junkyard. Red's probably got one sitting there by the National Guard there, right? If you you probably could find one there. And maybe a competitor in town has one, or somebody in the civil industry, maybe Lighthouse Foods has a same kind of motor, same kind of bearing. We've got a lot of choices of possible solutions. Then we think about it, and we do a cost-benefit analysis. We can include cost and speed and downtime and all the factors of implementing our solution. That's what the think does, and then we come up with a plan. That's what we do. That's a recipe on how to do what we're supposed to do. We got it figured out. So this simple little model is a guide for the thought process of how to go about fixing what's broken, getting some consensus that you're fixing what's broken, you're not doing something stupid. And those examples I gave were personal examples. You could think of 100 more in business. We could talk about this a long time, because how many times have we fixed the wrong thing? We just didn't get it diagnosed right. We didn't get to the bottom of it. We didn't get the root cause. So if I was going to build another Titanic, it'd be nice if I knew the true root cause of why this one sunk. And by the way, Titanic did have a sister ship. You can read about that in your research. And you can learn a couple things about that. So those of you that might have just been late coming in and just getting your head screwed on for class, after a full day's work, we have an assignment in 3 weeks to do a root cause analysis of why did the Titanic sink. And you can do that in a written form, a PowerPoint form, raw pictures form. You can turn it in online. You can hand it to me. You can present it to class. I just want to know what your thoughts are on what the root cause is. You could use a model like this. You don't have to. But you could use a model like that to help you with the thinking process. Any questions about that? Okay. I'm watching my time, because I got something that I got scared when you went on break. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to do this one. So we're going to, I think we're going to do it. And then I'll catch up with Toyota's problem solving stuff. What we're going to do is we are going to do an exercise I hope that some of you have done, but this is a problem-solving exercise, and combined with the marshmallow exercise that we did last class, we learned that you can't put a heavy marshmallow on top without having some consequences, snapping some spaghetti. And you told me when I walked in that I had inferior spaghetti sticks that were too fragile.
That's true.
And the consequence of that was they were going to be harder to build a thing out of. So hopefully this time I don't have inferior eggs, but I have eggs. And what I want to do...
Are they good ones?
These are the kind that have already had a rubber stamp on the top of them that says that, which probably weakens the shell, right? Yeah. These are the ones with the BB thing on it. So I got 12 eggs. Each team's going to need 1 egg for the first time. If you break it, you'll need another one to do it again. We're going to have 3 teams of 3, and 1 team will have 4 on the team. We're going to count to 3, and so whatever number you are is the team that you're on.
1, 2.
Okay. All right. So what you are going to do is, I'll get some materials up here in a second. What we are going to do is you are going to build a device to transport the egg It's gotta withstand a roof height drop. It doesn't, we're not gonna drop it from third floor roof. We're gonna drop it from the second floor over in the other building, off the stairs onto, not the sidewalk, we're gonna do it on the lobby floor, in the middle of the building there. So hopefully we'll keep it clean for the, for the custodians that do that. Your device must protect the egg. And so what you want to do in your capsule, you're gonna have the egg, you're gonna have a plastic cup, which is the standard beer pong cup. You get one. You get one beer pong cup. You get 10 straws, and these straws are the bendy straws, and so you can cut them shorter if you don't like the bend in it, but if you like the convolution as an extra shock absorber in your design, that's fine too. So there's a bunch here. Each team gets 10 straws, and you get a foot of masking tape. Use your judgment of how long a foot is. I will mince about a couple of inches one way or the other on your foot. You can be a little liberal if you'd like to. Because the last rule, the egg cannot touch the tape, so you can't tape up the egg. The tape is for use in your space capsule, whatever you're going to do. So that is the task. Is that clear? Everybody, what you're going to do? So you have 45 minutes really to do that, and we're gonna drop what you've built in 30 minutes. So at 8 o'clock sharp, we're gonna go into that other building there, and we're gonna go to the top of the stairs. I'm gonna put some plastic down just in case you guys design crappy spaceships. And, this is doable, but I want us to go through problem solving, learning, and thinking, because this whole root cause analysis is about think. And so part of the thinking is what could have caused failure, what can cause failure. It's kind of a failure modes and effect analysis, which we have to do in engineering these days, and we are doing it in business management as well. And then it's possible solutions. So think about the various possible solutions, and I want you to work with your team. You can work in this room, you can work in the hallway or wherever you'd like to go to work. I'm going to turn the lights on, and I'm going to let you be at your own devices, join your team, decide how you're going to work, and how you're going to do this. We are going to observe the results, and you will have a chance to make a correction in your design if it turns out you forgot something and didn't think that something was going to happen that turned out it did happen. And so, like, maybe, if Andrew is dropping them, he might toss yours up a little bit before it goes down or something, which I don't know if you will do that or not. You might. I just, on team 2, anyway, yeah, right? Okay, so I don't know if I'll trust him to drop them. Maybe you'll drop your own. Maybe that would be better, because maybe you want it oriented a certain way. Maybe you don't. So you are welcome to do that. You are also welcome to Google it if you want. You're not the first ones to do this. Other people have tried, and there's some physics involved, there's some problem solving involved, there's some teamwork involved, and there's some management involved. And so I want you to do all those things, get your supplies, and take off, okay? So for starters, team 1 can be up by Brendan, team 2 in the back corner there, team 3 kind of up here, and then you can go wherever you want to go. If you want to leave this room, you can. Just like don't go to McDonald's.
almost thinking if it's.
I got
something
all
like
of it.
wine with straws around here. Instead of in there, have.
Give me an idea.
I saw.
Fantastic.
I love it.
I've never done this.
And they do cut nice off of here too.
We did?
Probably
Yeah.
no.
From the yard.
None that like really strike my interest. I don't know. There's some pretty crazy ones.
You're gonna lose your egg before it starts.
Yeah.
Let somebody sit down.
Give me a cup.
I'll sit on it. I had 4 kids. I can handle this.
Qualified.
Yeah.
Huh?
What were the orange things?
I
Oh,
don't know, I
that
think that was tape. We can't have tape, can't touch the egg.
We decided we don't wanna do that, or we'd have just different plastic.
But you could utilize those somewhere.
There you go. I think it makes something just make a pair for because we could do that design.
So like I'm guessing we're just dropping one.
The egg will be so, but
When there's a way to bang off the bottom of the straw.
so we could do that design.
What if we like have a higher cut holes or something, higher point would be.
straws like that.
We'll draw just like this. As long as it doesn't break when we drop it, I think that works.
And then it cuts out like this.
Work? Agree?
Yeah, there you go.
Alright.
There you go.
You could crisscross.
Make me a cage.
Yeah, where's the whole sign?
The pen.
Yeah, so can we get a new
They
cup?
got the Milwaukee one.
Some
That's
people
all I got.
didn't use the cup.
Some people didn't use the
Is that what we
cup.
wanna try? 'Cause it's gonna
They
really
had,
fit up.
20 straws on that one instead of 10.
I read it.
Can we get a new one if we made a design flaw?
So you just
Yeah.
gotta bring it
Alright.
each one
Beautiful.
that day.
Just don't double them up.
No, we won't.
So do you wanna put the straws through, or I don't know, you wanna do that? I guess I'll start kinda.
Oh, actually, look at that. Milwaukee.
Hey, Brendan. Look at that.
So we're building on a cradle for it, so it's like a big
Yeah, like it's, so like, I feel like as long as you hold it off the bottom and drop it.
So are we doing-
The cup should take the cushion. So they need. I don't know.
tipping over.
Yeah.
It's
I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay.
You do a couple above it, so it can't.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I would keep the egg.
So say like, there we go.
Well, I don't think we need all of the straws. We could do like this kind on the bottom of it and.
Okay.
Sure about the leather.
Maybe. Maybe.
Cool. I think we should be alright.
Alright.
Wow.
Watch, I was gonna break first for saying that.
I touched it.
We just got, don't put any bad juju on us.
That's right.
Gotta intimidate.
You should, right? How many more do we wanna put there? I guess we could like literally layer it up. Yeah, put it in there and see if it's just, make sure we stay.
Squish it that way.
So I say we can do some top bottom and maybe, I don't know, do
Other
some
side.
down the sides, yeah, so it just like hits. We can do that and then use these. Take them all around. On top, you know what I mean? Oh my god.
doesn't work, you blame him.
Yeah. So I would like maybe make a layer above it and then we'll see how many straws we have left after we get enough for the sides. And then you can go back and stick some more in around it.
We need to do.
Oh, yeah.
You wanna do the art on the bag, like a
Want me
smiley
to
face?
do it more like an artist.
Oh no, remember I hid my, what is leadership? And I was like,
Three wolves in the crown?
Yeah.
These types?
Yeah.
Those are definitely creative.
I wasn't here for the art.
We drove a nice, drove to a nice place.
That's a
He's not gonna crack, so he isn't gonna move.
Okay.
So you're probably gonna put the gate in before that.
You guys know each other?
Just from starting this last, like, from April.
Are you also in the
I didn't,
Right here.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, man.
I don't know if we did an assignment together. Yeah, we did once.
Oh, yeah, it was, but it was like different. I thought we like both signed up for it.
We went, we were doing like camping or survival together.
Oh, yeah, it was, like, part of the class, not like it for real, like.
Okay, I'm like eating this all up
I
right now.
see that it's going there.
I'm joking 99% of the time.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Just so that we're all aware.
So we got top and bottom covered.
Aim protection.
Let me see what everybody else has.
Eyes on your own page.
I need to keep your ears shut.
Yeah, and once we get it like that, I think we just get them down the sides. That should be pretty legit.
If you stab it up and then.
That's what I'm saying,
Oh,
yeah,
like
yeah.
those
Do it
cuts.
just like that, go all the way, go all the way around, fill the gaps.
You doubted my pen?
Open the rest up.
That's okay. That's okay. I have doubted my pen many times.
They copied us. Oh no, it's a little older. Ours is definitely better.
That's okay. Theirs is gonna break first. I heard you say it. They doubt their own design. Huh?
Sure,
Did they really?
It's our team name right there.
I'll let you guys decide that one. So am I gonna go through the bending parts, right?
It seems like they're the best. Definitely.
Dixie, didn't they, Dixie used to be called that?
Mhm.
It was not really tricky.
Doing great.
Try. Hey, we got more. More is more.
It's a long foot.
Is that how you read tape measures?
That's how most people do.
It's a lot. No, it's a lot. It's a big hat. I don't think eighths.
Last minute design change.
Do eighths and inches. Yeah, this is gonna give me a lot was an interesting assignment. That was like a big marshmallow and a tall space station out of pasta. Yeah.
Sorry.
We're just like,
It's
I know,
going.
I'm just like staring at you.
This was the only one that was
Who's?
yours.
Barely.
Really bad. Yeah.
So I mean, it is for seconds.
Would he allow you to manage your fees? Seems like
Well, he said you could
he-
use whatever you said you could move tables around or whatever, and I realized after the fact I should have known that. Oh yeah, this is like shit right now.
It's almost like we have 5 minutes.
I know, we can armor this thing up if we really want.
A lot more difficult than it seems.
But it's hard now to see something.
If it tilts the sun, if it goes down that angle. Well, I don't know, maybe the straws will.
Oh, geez, they just said that's like,
Oh, dude.
So whoever wins gets to
Well,
leave
even
it
if it
here.
does land on his side, it's just straws will have to all in.
Right.
Fresh.
Should we give it a shot?
Have you had it? Break it and maybe.
I don't know.
Draft will keep.
Looks like you have less.
Oh yeah, they get covered in it every day.
Oh, yeah.
If we're ready to test our design, can we? We take it outside.
Let's go to the other.
I really wonder if I can get
Are we ready to
last
test our
two
design?
through at the same hole.
Might as well.
Good
Do you have any other ideas?
What do you think?
Shove them in like a bunch of places. And
Not bad.
somehow
Fold them up and stick them down sideways.
You guys can do the last two straws.
I don't know.
That might
Not
give
load
us
of
a
straws
little
to
more
keep
stability as far as centering.
It's like what I look for when I'm here. I'm looking for you to little straws to fix it up.
Yeah, it's an important section.
Here you go.
Above.
Just whatever. I mean, we got two more, so maybe.
So if our first attempt succeeds, are we good?
You're good.
All right.
You're gonna take,
trying to get it like in the
Right.
Just got that way easier than I got anyway, dude. I live my own night.
Secretly.
so we're going in the middle door over there to the lobby at the bottom of the stairs. They're gonna do a drop if you wanna join us.
Are we gonna do it inside the lobby?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And we're gonna target some paper just in case.
All right.
And then we'll clean up on the
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
Which way you wanna go?
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
see what we
pretty
get.
dang. I'm liking that.
It's a winner.
That's tight. Do we do them all? So do we even need? Yeah, we can even need them. But I mean, I don't know what's gonna do, cause we're probably just gonna drop them like this, right?
What if this is recorded? Let's see it.
Yeah, we've been. Probably is on there, dude. Probably is on there.
I just need the tape.
Save that tape
Do we
for
wanna
later.
do we wanna stick this other shot somewhere crazy?
Yeah.
Should we do like a diagonal one or something? I don't know.
Let's see.
I'll let you guys decide.
I feel like we could put one right there. Going across that. Right there. It's
Let's
gonna
do
lock
it.
it in.
Let's do it.
You might as well.
So, how do we make sure we pay this exact like that?
Oh shit, I really want to fix that for the egg. So,
One time with the Do we do awnings like the car?
Yeah, carports. Oh yeah, we do those. Are you guys looking for something for a development?
I feel like one time we'll call you guys. We just do property management, so we have people in RVs.
Oh, yeah.
Out, go and hit the awning.
Oh, yeah.
That's how it is invented.
Yeah, we go places all the time. I think that's pretty dang secured.
Alrighty.
Let's do
Now
it.
let's just see how it goes.
The tape is for
drop. We didn't need it. That's how
No, we
we
didn't.
It's
Tape.
like, wait, what if it lands on the bottom and it pushes us up and then, I mean, can we take it somewhere, how on the bottom?
We can just go like that.
Will it help? Oh, yeah.
Does that work? Does that help?
Yep. Where are we going?
We gotta go downstairs across the street.
I think it can't be like stuck to the tape.
Where it's trying to walk away from. One more straw we can show, or two more straws we can show somewhere.
We got 6 minutes until deadline, so at this point in time, somebody's like,
You here?
yeah, we might have this one.
I was just wondering. We got a new straw coming loose here. Lower. I don't know, I think we might have it, guys. It's wanting to fall over after impact, but I need to get that hit straight. Oh, well, we don't need more tape for one sheet.
You don't cheat.
I don't cheat.
I'll leave an extra $1.
I guess you'll be our dropper.
Oh, God.
And I have no idea where they went. Well, I'm using some other tape break, so.
I kinda wanna lead right from there, so.
Listen to 'em, yeah, knock on 'em.
Let's see.
Maybe if we just shove a ton of straws in there at the edge.
So the same
Maybe.
thing, but like with no
But like in
plant.
the holes. Cool. Just as much cushion, I don't know.
We can just have the egg where it is now and do a bunch and then just drop it with this stuff. Call it good.
I mean,
Someone else.
maybe if we did what we already did, but like put the egg in there and then put a ton of straws crisscross along the bottom and then drop it like that. I don't know.
If we had different materials, it would be easier.
People have done this successfully.
Uh-huh.
None of these materials are very efficient.
With straws and rubber bands and cotton balls.
Cotton balls. That's
Uh-huh.
cotton balls would help.
Do it just like that without the cup. I don't know
I
what
mean, we
that
already
is.
lost, so I'm not like super worried about the cake touching
Right.
the egg.
At this point, just do whatever works.
Something like that.
That's good.
Oh, we should try to smell this on it too.
I'm strapping me for that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they've got a base, and then they've got like a teepee. Yep, just like that.
Should probably go with
Did they win?
first.
Nobody.
What's that?
There's no part of the neither of yours.
All right. It blew up, huh?
Yeah, it was loud too, actually. Weirdly enough.
Heard you guys did great. I heard that it was like a
Well,
Yeah.
it was a firework shot straight back So just time we put holes in the egg and blow the egg yolk out.
Oh, that's perfect.
First, yeah. Hey, they didn't say you couldn't do that.
I remember doing that as a kid. Running up to my sister. Hey.
Yeah, Google's not even anything.
You guys run over here and try it again?
Yeah, you learned something from it.
What'd you learn? That's what we learned as
Did you
well.
not grab the egg?
Well, you want
Just kidding.
We don't give away our secrets.
The drop was great. It was a straight shot.
told we all did so poorly, we were offered 10 rubber bands.
We'll have a good
10 rubber bands?
What? There were rubber bands?
The bendy to the bendy to have
The rubber bands were offered in case we failed, which we did.
Such catastrophic failure.
Getting all those in there.
You can just shove it in.
I think success at this point is what he's looking for.
Okay. No, that's just you trying to please everybody.
You know what? I'll do it. Not everybody, just my team.
You go to the freaking bar after this or what? You give me a drink. I can give me a drink for this.
When I go to the bar every
Go.
I'm gonna get my water.
we should go.
We go station.
Usually you start at Hive, then you go to the station, and then go to one.
Cool.
If you get your, once you get your traffic.
You gotta go to one of those.
I went this week to 80s and 90s station.
Oh yeah, you got some friends over
I
there.
don't know how you do that.
It's pretty wild.
And I get super trash when I go dancing with friends. I'm like, I can't remember something.
I think boundaries at 6 for last night and I was done.
When you're in it.
Like whining.
Beautiful.
Like 4 different things and mix
All in
it
one
on.
drink.
That's what we did.
Like
That's
5
what we did
shots
last
last
night.
night.
It wasn't that.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Oh, Yeah, that was friction,
Right.
right?
Temporary fracture, we don't want that.
And that's how many straws?
A 10.
Oh, that's all of them?
Yeah, we can go from the other direction.
Hey, you can't go through a crack in the egg.
So now it's just stand.
What are you talking about?
That's.
You know, that's you, no idea what you're talking about.
Do not use that
We
one.
got to lose.
Cracks all over it. Actually, here, you get an egg.
I mean, as long as
We're
they-
good. We're good.
I'd say we can literally try it like that. Just think about it because,
You guys get some of the good one, right?
well, I just mean like, cause if it falls,
Theoretically,
theoretically how we want it to, just like standing straight up, then the space it has between the bottom, maybe those straws will cushion it so when it hits the
don't we
ground.
want to at least put some paper on it?
Yeah, I mean, we could.
That thing was.
Maybe just take off the top. So when it
Carl
explodes,
almost
it's
had an unfortunate event.
Can't, maybe like paper on it.
Those are slides. No?
Like around the.
Oh god, that's not.
So the crash
What
falls.
about if we can bring it up, so when it hits, this thing slides down in?
So we don't want him to be able to get out. Right now he can get out.
Yeah, we just need to get it to where we can wait. You know, it's gonna
Yeah.
They have decided.
Oh, okay.
They have decided.
Maybe we move
See if I
this.
can squeeze them
Right
right
here.
here and tape that
If
up.
we get 3 of these going, and then you try and at the bottom, hold them up. Oh, yeah.
Twist it, bop it.
There are no rules. Only life, right?
I don't know. You tell me there's no rules, I'm gonna cheat.
Technically.
I mean, I don't think we
Really
really,
good at it, yeah.
Right.
this isn't something we really trained for in our lives. Maybe Boy Scouts if we did that. Yeah, I think it would be.
Rubber band.
Here, maybe just grab.
Rubber band,
a piece of
Band-Aid,
tape
you
and
know.
just start going
What about 10
around.
rubber bands?
Here.
So we would need something like this. Right?
That, or even a picture of that, where everyone's trying to be free. So that way it rests right
That's
here.
your idea, what are you talking
Oh, yeah.
about?
Put those straight out.
Well, what am I doing?
He's good.
Am I taping those?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, how enough strength is
Might
it?
Just
stay.
letting go, just like
Maybe we
this.
should put rubber bands around
Could do rubber
Yeah.
bands right there on the joints.
Around our joints.
Shit.
How many do you need to?
Like that, yeah.
This is really delicate procedure right here. Seriously. Triple bypass.
Andrew, we need your
You got a
tickets.
long foot of it.
What? No way. You guys are team one, all right? You guys have
We're borrowing
You
late.
cheat, put a
Yay!
You know what?
$25 an hour.
That counts.
No, we can put 20, right?
I thought it was only 10.
$150 consulting fee.
10, that's why you
I
get
thought
some.
it was 20, yeah.
No, it's 10.
I didn't listen to the instructions around this. Okay.
Alright, let's keep going.
Sidewall.
Fuck it.
Straw.
Well, I'm sure we could.
I think you should be all right, though.
I could live with it. I wouldn't lose an ounce of sleep if there was 11 straws in
Like
there.
this, look, we can move around like.
I mean, as long as, I feel like as long as this thing just lands how it's sitting, I think we should be alright. I say we go try it. I say we go
Wait,
try
wait,
it.
wait, put a strip of tape around it, just right there. Just come on, just.
I just wrinkled up our long foot. But no, I'm down. Kinda works. Yeah, it's not bad. I say we go.
I didn't spill water on the way.
Okay.
I think
That's
we'll
it.
try it.
This
Did he say we
absorbs
could use
it.
That's what I'm
rubber
thinking.
bands?
Well, as long as it lands like that.
Are we can use rubber bands?
Seatbelt.
I've never tried. What?
Where did this come from?
Came from him.
He just busted out some arms.
He was like, I failed so bad that.
It's like, here's some rubber bands.
You need to give us all a crunch.
Fill that thing with mud.
Well, you've got Lord.
Yeah, we're all standing in front of here.
Oh,
in front of the
I
camera.
see.
That's working.
Well, I think that.
Okay.
Think we got some strength here, but nice.
I think we're good point. Did our best. It looks great.
All right, let's keep him in there. Gentlemen,
Real loose in there.
he is really loose in there.
Yeah.
It's concerning, right?
I still think we should just take them to the straws.
Maybe. Oh look, the straw's veggie. So like, hey,
So nice of that. Right across these.
Probably one of those to tape on the backside. So hold it in place.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna curl it. Should all start crying just to get this up still on. And we have a.
I'm assuming this is gonna take your run to the.
All right, I think we're good. Shall we try it?
I think we
This
should.
to kind of cover
I
it.
got my brush
That
out.
I like it.
cover it.
Let's do a test rock here. We got plenty of it, right?
Nope, you're all out.
Run a couple pieces of tape
All
over
right,
it.
Carl, we believe in you.
jump it.
Can we use it back?
You know, I thought about turning the cup into a parachute. I don't know if that would have. Oh, I think we're golden. I think we're good.
I don't think parachutes ever work. They're just somewhat symmetrical.
You know, I jumped out of the plane, so I think that they do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like it's staying centered.
Tense.
Garbage bag parachute then.
No, it was a real parachute.
Okay.
All right, away we go.
Drop center, especially. if you
This is
don't
no cup Carl.
like it. So,
Do it.
Two fingers fly out.
yeah, just.
And it's a measure marker, we gotta draw like a shark or teeth on that thing.
Anytime someone asks, I'm always like, not the picture.
No, I cloud never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to the World's League of Legends Champions.
You went there?
Yeah. Brooklyn is in LA. Cool as heck.
I never went, but yeah, I played League for like 7 years. So.
I played for like 2, and then I was like, yeah, I can't deal with people. So, like, that is exhausting.
By default, no cup crawl wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the only egg with a name.
How you doing? Nice. Yeah. So that doesn't really work.
Back to back.
Yeah, I had to fill out all their people and have it all like ready to go.
Yeah, one today.
All right, well,
yeah,
I'll leave right now.
I was there
See you,
for
man.
like a couple hours and just went,
I'm done.
same for me.
That's what I did.
Sit down.
Yeah.
So, you know what, guys?
It's fun breaking eggs with you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've had multiple guys that were hired and then just never even showed up for the first day and had all their paperwork to do. So annoying.
It's like a day, honestly. It really sucks because cost of living rose so fast. And even if you look at that like O thing, that O network, if you look at the wages, they're all still
I didn't
really
look.
low. I looked for welders.
In our area,
It's like 13 is like the low, like bottom 10%, but then the average or median is like 17
really.
for median. And I was like, okay, that's a little better.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, okay, well, the question is like, who are you trying to hire? Like, are you trying to hire the guy who has a family and kids and, you know, a mortgage? Well, then you're not going to be paying him 17. Not
Or
around
maybe
here.
not as much or an idiot because they can work it in and out literally for more than that.
Yeah, and it's like, it's really weird to look at that and be like, I don't think that's right for right now. It might have been a year ago.
They shouldn't have that on there.
No, but it's just weird.
Some employers